Skill trees and upgrade systems are a commonplace in a variety of game genres. They can range from being simple and straightforward to being more advanced and interwoven. They allow players to distribute given resources or points towards whatever the player feels is more rewarding and beneficial during gameplay. These systems can also be a great visual representation of how far the player has reached a desirable goal. The freedom of choice is something that gives the player the feeling of control over the direction they could take their character. Hi there, I'm Sean, and this is another Joust Devlog. So welcome if you're new, and welcome back for everybody else. If you're looking to play a demo of the game, stick around to the end to find out more. Over the past week, I began developing and expanding the player upgrade system. It's not as complex or sophisticated as most games, but I wanted to give the player a little bit more choice, even if it's simple and straightforward. The idea came to me after I created this material as a joke for the game in the last video called Generitanium, so here's how it's all going to work. Since the beginning, the game has always been about high, mid, and low attacks. These would correlate to a piece of armor that the player could equip. Losing a hit in one of these three spots would knock off a piece of armor, then make them vulnerable in that spot to death. As it stands, there are no armor pieces in the game yet, so any attack type will kill you. The original plan was to have each row of armor upgraded a certain level when the player levels up. The other upgradable object will be the player's loadout slot for revival crosses. Originally the player would start off with one, but after I got my friend and fellow YouTube game dev, Mults, to demo the game for me, I changed it to 0. I noticed he never actually equipped any during his playtime, which means he didn't know it was there. Therefore, I will need more of these. These points of interest will help the player understand certain things that they can do in the game. The changes I made will allow the player to purchase upgrades through an interactive screen using Generitanium, which will now be acquired by defeating bosses, but a little bit more on that later. So the first thing I needed to do was get the upgrades loaded into our save system. This was done by just adding a single array to the player class. This then would appear in the item manager like this. The first three elements will represent the head, chest, and legs, and the final one would be the loadout of revival crosses. The values will then represent what level the upgrade is at. So with that out of the way, I started designing. The first thing I needed to do was move the edit tab to the other side for future reasons. Then I created this little icon here of an anvil and put the tab above the shop. Then after several hours of moving things around into different positions and figuring out the best layout, this is what I ended up with, which I'm calling the Forge. I decided to go for the skill tree type look, where each upgrade is joined onto each other to make it clearer. On the left, we have both the resources the player currently has available to them, which will only be Generitanium for both types of upgrades and coins for just the armor. In the middle, we have the armor sets for the head, chest, and legs, going from left to right with the cost of the upgrade at the end. Then we have the loadouts for revival crosses, which go from top to bottom and 1 to 3 with the cost of each upgrade on the side. So for all the upgrade buttons, I created a reusable script that I can attach. The script will contain which upgrade it's for, a reference to the next one, the cost, and handle the color changing and interactivity of the button. There's a lot of manual data entry on this script, which is prone to user error, but we're only dealing with 9 buttons, so it's not too many to deal with. Something bigger, I'd have to create a more reliable dynamic system. So now when we click on each button, it will turn red, activate the next one in the row, and update the cost of the upgrade. When all the upgrades have been purchased, a tick will be added to the cost box at the end. Now when we check back in the item manager, we can see all the player stats have been officially updated. So this is how we will introduce Generitanium and the Forge to the player and then get them to use and be aware of the revival loadouts. The first piece of Generitanium will be given to the player at the end of the tutorial, which I have updated the inbox accordingly. Once the player has gained their first piece, the point of interest icon will flash over the Forge tab, telling them to tap it. When inside, they will see the only thing they can purchase is the first loadout for the revival cross. Mainly because at this point, the player won't have any coins. So if they want to upgrade their armor, they'll have to hold on to their Generitanium and come back when they have coins and purchase one of their first armor upgrades. When the player purchases their first loadout upgrade, the point of interest icon will appear over the add sign until they add their first revival cross to their loadout. So where's the player going to get more Generitanium, you ask? Well, this is the part where I introduce bosses. From bosses is the answer to that question. Bosses will be a special type of enemy which are harder and have longer phases. They will only appear once in a single run. You will also only be able to add them to a run by adding every single enemy and obstacle that comes before it. The first time a player defeats a boss, they will be rewarded with Generitanium. The player won't be able to gain any more by fighting them again, meaning there's only a limited amount in the game. So this will be something that's implemented at a later date, but this will be the future outline. Going back to the feedback I received, I made some slight adjustments. He claimed the game was like Dark Souls and quite hard, saying the first enemy was difficult due to the timing of its switching stances, not giving a new player enough time to process what attacks to use. So I simply adjusted the enemy to make it reveal its stance earlier on. I will then create a harder enemy with a longer switching stance later on. So this is going to lead into my next point. I'd really love to get more feedback from you guys to smooth everything out. So I'm going to announce that I will release a demo for all you to publicly play on itch.io. So you can all test it out and hopefully give me some feedback. Now there's still a lot of work and polish I've got to do before releasing it. So when the next devlog after this one is released in a week's time, it will be available for you to download. It would mean a lot to have your guys' support, so comment below if you're interested in playing the demo, even you people who are just silently watching all the time. And before wrapping up, the last thing I started working on was the lighting. I messed around a little and added this bright light illuminating from the sun to help add to the overall visuals. This will also help me in creating other kinds of atmospheres and darker levels I can make in the future. The main reason I added lighting was so I can have this little halo ring when the player revives. Since changing the enemy's spawn rate, on revival it would pick up the nearest enemy and move them to another layer so they don't hit you at all. So when trying to fight the next enemy, nothing would happen. By adding this, kind of adds an invincibility feel temporarily, which is usually a feature in most games. Anyways, that's all for today. Again, go check out my friend Mults' channel. Does a lot of really cool projects in Unity, like recreating Wii Sports and using a camera as a random motion tracking object. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.